Hello guys and welcome to the Brightation. Today we are going to be doing an auxiliary video, a French auxiliary video. I haven't posted in 9 days and I'm sorry to say that. It's because I haven't really had much time. But now I'll try to fully cover the auxiliaries because I did mention it in my previous French video. Please like and subscribe as it really helps me support you guys and it helps you support me. So thank you for doing that if you've already done so. Now, French auxiliaries. They're like auxiliaries in English, but obviously they're much different. Now, the main two types of auxiliaries can either be avoir or être. As you learned before in the IR verb and an RE verb, it is an RE verb mean to be. It's pretty irregular and you'll probably have to use it in quite a few select verbs. Well, avoir is more applicable. So you can use it in essentially every single verb you come across. But you still have to remember them both because they're quite irregular. Now, here's the conjugations just to refresh your mind. For avoir is j'ai, ai, tu as, as. Il, elle, on a. It sounds the same as tu, but still just one a. Like il y a, there is. That's just pretty easy to remember. So a is just one a. Nous avons, we have. Vous avez, you have or you all have. And remember is V-E-Z and il, on. Remember that T is silent, even though it's spelled O-N-T. Now, for avoir, we've got this sorted for like maybe 90% of verbs or 95%. Definitely not 100 because there's some with être, albeit a select few. Now, let's say we wanted to do manger, a regular ER verb. It would be j'ai mangé. That would be with an acute accent. So it's an accent going this way. So that would be j'ai mangé. And even if it was il a mangé or elle a mangé, if it was even like a feminine person speaking, then it wouldn't change. It would just be il a mangé, elle a mangé. Manger would be the exact same spelling. Just notice that. Well, être, let's say for être we were doing aller. And for être, it's mostly irregular verbs. Mostly because there's monter, l'entrer, entrer. They are very important verbs. And you'll have to use être for some of them. Some of them are ER, few select are RE, and some of them are IR. So we're gonna do entrer. Now for entrer, you have to say je suis monté, which can be applicable in male. Just the acute accent if it's male, but if it's female, then you have to add an E. This applies to every être auxiliary verb because the être or avoir is the auxiliary. It acts as the auxiliary. It's just like the past participle. It's like the past tense. As said again, être applies to some verbs. If you're not really counting variants, it applies to about 13 or 14. But if there's variants, there can be like up to 30 of them. Venir is one of the irregular culprits that you need to learn. Venir means to come. And it's so important. For example, I'm coming to the cinema, I'm coming to the wedding, I'm coming to the restaurant. It's so applicable in daily life. Not as applicable as to be, to have, to go, or things like that. But still very applicable. You need to use it in your day-to-day life. Now, in this case, it would be je suis venu, even though it's not RE. So it doesn't end in a U. So, je suis venu, just a U. Just a U. And then, if it's a feminine subject, then it would have an E. Again, this applies to all être-based verbs. If it's feminine, add an E. If it's masculine, just do the default. Now, we're going to go back to the avoir, and I'm gonna essentially show you all the endings for the 3 factors of verb. So, ER is essentially an acute accent E. RE is a U, and IR verbs are just I. But those are the regular ones. Some of them are not regular at all. For example, prendre or boire. Or, for example, vouloir, pouvoir, devoir. The modal verbs, they aren't regular. You'll need to learn a lot of them, because they're not very regular. So, boire is just bu. Many of the irregular verbs we just mentioned end in U, even though some of them aren't RE, and even though some of them don't even look like their regular past participle variants. For example, j'ai fini is just FINI. That's it. All you need to do is remove R, because it's an IR verb. It's just j'ai fini. Remove the R and you're done. You don't need to add an E. You don't need to do anything else. It's just gonna be the same thing for every single verb. You don't need to do some random conjugation thing, like the present or basically any other tense. But with irregular ones, it's a little different, because pouvoir, let's take pouvoir for example, it's just PU, which sounds like I'm saying child language for ill, that's disgusting. But it's PU, so it's j'ai pu. It sounds like poo, but it's definitely not. Now for devoir, it's DU. With a circumflex. If you haven't heard of a circumflex, I'll show you what it is. Now, let's say you do a basic drawing of a house. It goes like this and it goes like this. Well, if you just draw a 2D linear shape of a house's roof, and that's a circumflex, so it just goes like this. Like an incomplete triangle, essentially. So that's why you notice être with a circumflex. So essentially that's what a circumflex is. So it's j'ai dû with a U with a circumflex. So that's essentially what it is. Devoir is IR, if you're wondering. It's pretty irregular, and you don't really have to learn the auxiliary or past or perfect tense as much as you need to in the present tense or any other tense like the future, but still pretty important anyway. You'll need to learn it. Now, vouloir is probably the most regular one out of them all. I meant irregular. So essentially, it's not very regular. Everyone's like past tense or perfect tense, then it would be j'ai vouloir, which sounds weird because if it was regular, it would sound like vouloir, which means to want. It would be in the exact same pronunciation, which makes no grammatical sense. So, of course, it had to be irregular, so it's j'ai voulu. It's VOULU, j'ai voulu. Remember, no auxiliary in the avoir tense changes at all. It is only être. That's the only time where it changes. So remember, venir. As I said before, it's venu with a U and then an E on the end of its feminine. But I also just remembered that for nu, vu, and EL, you have to add an S. So if it's masculine plural, and let's say it's aller, so it's nous sommes allés. ALL accented E with a grey accent with S. But if it's feminine, just add the EN, factor the EN after the accented E. So that's essentially what it is For nous, vous, il is essentially plural because we is plural, you all is plural, or with vous it is formal. So if you're only referring to one person, you don't need to speak to them as if they're more than one entity. But for E and L, you always need to do that. For nous, you always need to do that. It is so important. And if you miss that mark, then it's going to be pretty annoying when in the test you're asked to conjugate that and you miss out the S or you miss out the normal E because you just end up thinking it's too accented. Just remember to utilise avoir and être carefully. Avoir is the more applicable one, so do not misuse it at all. Être is the smaller one, but it's used in more real life scenarios, like to go, to come, to descend, to ascend, to be born or to die, things like that. It's just simple things. All you just need to remember is that avoir is applicable, être is not as, but it still is. So, I hope you be bright, stay right, and learn some French auxiliary verbs.